They didn't just reject her, they erased her. It was 10 degrees below zero in the Montana wilderness when Alpha Garrett Vaughn ordered his enforcers to strip Alara Ashford of her coat and leave her in Dead Man's Gulch. No wolf, no pack, no chance of survival. They laughed as they drove away, convinced the snow would bury their secrets by morning. But they made one fatal miscalculation. They didn't know the territory they dumped her in belonged to the AlphaKing. And he doesn't take kindly to people throwing away what's his, especially when that discarded girl happens to be his destined mate, the last living heir of the Shadowmere bloodline, and the future queen of the entire Northern Coalition. This is the story of how a girl left to freeze became the woman who made winter kneel. November 14th, 2024, 10 o'clock at night, the Silver Pine Ridge packhouse barn smelled like wet hay and fear. Alara Ashford stood on the dirt floor, her worn sneakers caked with mud, her thin frame swimming in an oversized gray hoodie that had belonged to her father. The fabric still carried the ghost of his scent, wood smoke and pine, though Richard Ashford had been dead for 10 years. She was 18 years old today. This was supposed to be the day everything changed, the day her wolf would emerge, the day she would finally belong, the day she could stop being the pack's charity case and become a full member of Silver Pine Ridge. 200 wolves crowded the barn, their breath steaming in the November cold, their eyes reflecting amber and gold in the flickering lamplight. They weren't here to celebrate. They were here to watch her fail. The full moon hung fat and white beyond the barn's broken skylight, a cold disk of light that should have triggered the transformation every 18-year-old wolf experienced. The shift should have been inevitable, written into her DNA, passed down through generations of shifters who had walked this land long before humans built their cities and highways. But Alara stood there completely devastatingly human. No burst of fur, no cracking of bones, no wolf rising to meet the moon's call. Just a small girl with dark hair and pale skin shivering in the Montana night. At the front of the barn, Alpha Garrett Vaughn sat on what he called his judgment seat, a ridiculous velvet-lined chair he'd hauled up from some estate sale in Billings. He was 32, movie star handsome in that sharp, cruel way that certain men weaponize. Square jaw, cold blue eyes like chips of glacial ice, shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway. He'd inherited the alpha position 3 years ago. When his father dropped dead at 57, officially from a heart attack, though, there were whispers about the timing. Convenient timing. Fatal timing for anyone who might have challenged his claim. Beside him stood Vivian Hale, his Luna, and the pack's reigning beauty. 28 years old, all curves and calculated cruelty, she'd shifted at 16 and never let anyone forget it. Tonight she wore a crimson dress that cost more than most pack members earned in a month, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves over bare shoulders. She looked at Alara the way someone might look at a stain on expensive carpet, something distasteful that needed to be removed. "Well, Alara," Garrett's voice boomed across the barn, echoing off the wooden rafters. The crowd went silent. "We're waiting. Where's the beast?" Alara's throat felt like sandpaper. "I don't know." The words came out as a whisper, barely audible. "Please, Alpha Garrett, give me more time. Sometimes late bloomers need." Late bloomers. Vivian's laugh was like breaking glass. She stepped down from the platform and circled Alara slowly, a predator sizing up wounded prey. "Honey, late bloomers shift by 19 at the absolute latest. You're not a late bloomer. You're defective. A genetic dead end." She reached out and ran one perfectly manicured nail down Alara's cheek, pressing just hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. The pain was sharp and immediate, but Alara didn't flinch. She'd learned years ago that flinching only made it worse, that showing weakness was like throwing chum to sharks. The blood ran warm down to her jawline, a single red tear. "You've been eating our food for 10 years. Vivian continued, circling back around to face her, "taking up space in our bunkhouse, breathing our air, using our resources. And for what? To be a human pet, a mascot. We're not a charity, sweetheart. This is a pack. And in a pack, strength is the only currency that matters." The gathered wolves muttered agreement. It was true, and everyone knew it. In the supernatural world, power determined everything: your rank, your safety, your right to exist. If you couldn't hunt, you didn't eat. If you couldn't fight, you didn't survive. And if you couldn't shift, you were nothing, my father. Alara's voice was stronger now, edged with something desperate. She looked past Vivian to Garrett, trying to find some spark of mercy in those ice chip eyes. My father was beta of this pack before he died. Richard Ashford served Silver Pine Ridge for 30 years. He was loyal. He was strong. Out of respect for his memory, for everything he gave to this pack. Your father is dead. Garrett stood up, cutting her off with the finality of a guillotine blade. He died of weakness. A hunting accident, they said. Caught by a grizzly because he was too slow, too careless, too human in the moment that mattered. And now you stand here exhibiting the same pathetic weakness. He descended the platform steps slowly, deliberately, each footfall heavy with alpha authority. When he reached Alara, he towered over her 6'4" of pure dominance. She could smell the expensive cologne he wore, something woody and overpowering, trying to mask the underlying scent of his wolf. And beneath that, something else. Something bitter. Fear. It was just a flash, barely perceptible, the tiniest tension in his jaw when he looked at her. The same tell she'd noticed before years ago, when he'd first started insisting she'd take daily vitamins from Nurse Greta. A tiny muscle twitch that appeared whenever he lied. I, Alpha Garrett Vaughn of Silver Pine Ridge Pack, hereby reject Alara Ashford from pack membership. His voice carried formal weight, now the kind of pronouncement that bound supernatural law. You are rogue. You are exiled. You are nothing. The words hit harder than any physical blow could. To be declared rogue was a death sentence in the wolf world. Rogues had no pack protection, no territory, no rights. They were hunted by other packs, killed on sight by alphas protecting their borders, or they died alone in the wilderness from starvation exposure, or the madness that came from having your wolf locked away with no pack bond to anchor it. Alara felt something crack inside her chest, a physical sensation like ice splitting under pressure. The pack bond, that invisible thread that had connected her to Silver Pine Ridge since birth, severed. The barn suddenly felt colder. The wolves around her, suddenly strangers instead of family. She was alone. Completely, absolutely alone. Take her to the border, Garrett commanded, waving his hand dismissively. Two enforcers stepped forward from the crowd. Brock and Kane, both former military, both built like walking concrete barriers. They grabbed Alara's arms with unnecessary roughness. Wait. Garrett smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Alara's blood run cold. Not the southern border near the highway. Take her to the North Pass. We don't want her lingering around where tourists might find her and ask questions. A ripple of shock moved through the gathered wolves. The North Pass was the northern edge of Silver Pine Ridge territory, where their land bordered the neutral wilderness of Dead Man's Gulch. And beyond that gulch lay the Shadowmere Dominion, the vast territory controlled by the AlphaKing himself, Ronan Blackthorn. Every wolf in Montana knew the stories about Blackthorn, a legend who'd unified 40 packs under his rule, a former Navy SEAL who had brought military precision to pack hierarchy, a man who supposedly killed rogues on sight without question or mercy. The North Pass in a blizzard with no coat. That wasn't exile. That was execution. Alpha Garrett, please. Alara tried to pull away from the enforcers, but their grips were iron. It's 10 below zero. The storm warning said another front is moving in tonight. I won't survive. That's the point, Vivian whispered in her ear as they dragged her past. She leaned in close, her breath hot against Alara's cheek. Do us all a favor and die quickly. I want your bunk for my shoe collection. It's small, but it has that nice window with the morning light. The barn door swung open and the November wind slammed into Alara like a fist. The cold was immediate and vicious, stealing the breath from her lungs, cutting through her thin hoodie like it wasn't there. Brock and Kane hauled her toward a battered Ford F-150 idling in the dirt lot, its exhaust pipe pumping white clouds into the black night. They threw her into the truck bed like a sack of feed. The metal was so cold it burned through her jeans where she landed. Kane slammed the tailgate shut with a clang that echoed across the empty lot, and Brock climbed into the driver's seat. The engine roared and the truck lurched forward, tires spitting gravel. Alara scrambled to her knees, gripping the side of the truck bed as they accelerated down the long driveway away from the pack house. Through the rear window, she could see wolves spilling out of the barn, returning to their cabins and trailers, already forgetting about her. The warm yellow lights of the pack house grew smaller, then disappeared as they turned onto the main road. The drive north was silent, except for the roar of the engine and the howl of wind over the cab. Alara's hands went numb within minutes. She tried to memorize the route, a survival instinct that kicked in despite the terror. Her father had taught her that back when she was small, before the hunting accident that wasn't an accident. Always know your way back, Ellie girl. Always count the landmarks. Trees can lie, but roads remember. They passed the turnoff to Highway 12. 20 minutes later, the old grain silo near the Riverside property. 35 minutes, the burned-out shell of the Henderson Ranch house destroyed by fire in 2018. 40 minutes they turned onto a logging road, unpaved, and barely maintained, the truck bouncing over frozen ruts. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes that accumulated on Alara's hair and shoulders, slowly turning her into a ghost. She thought about jumping out, about rolling off the tailgate and taking her chances in the forest. But they were going 40 miles an hour on a road of ice and rock, and even if she survived the fall, where would she go? No pack would take in a declared rogue. No human town would understand what she was, or rather what she was supposed to be. She'd starve or freeze within days. After 90 minutes of driving, the truck finally slowed and stopped. Alara's entire body was shaking, her teeth chattering so hard she'd bitten her tongue and tasted copper. Brock killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the whistle of wind through the pines. They were in the middle of nowhere. Dark forest pressed in on all sides, the road barely visible under 6 inches of fresh powder. The temperature had dropped even further. Alara could see her breath forming ice crystals in the air, before her face tiny diamonds that fell and disappeared into the snow-covered truck bed. Kane came around and dropped the tailgate. End of the line, princess. His voice held no emotion, no regret. He was just following orders, doing a job. That's what made it worse somehow, the bureaucratic efficiency of her execution. Alara climbed out on legs that didn't want to support her weight. The snow was mid-calf deep, seeping immediately into her sneakers. Please. She hated the begging in her voice, but survival instinct overrode pride. Just let me go near a town. Drop me at a truck stop on the highway. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. I swear on my father's grave, orders are orders. Brock shrugged, already turning back toward the driver's door. Then Kane did something that transformed murder into cruelty. He walked over to Alara, grabbed the collar of her hoodie, and yanked it hard. She stumbled forward off balance, and before she could recover, he'd pulled the entire garment over her head, leaving her in just a thin, long-sleeved shirt and jeans. The cold hit her exposed skin like a slap. Hey, Alara lunged for the hoodie, desperate. Kane dangled it just out of reach, grinning. Alpha said you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. He tossed the hoodie into the truck cab. Consider this payment for gas. He climbed into the passenger seat and slammed the door. The engine roared back to life. Alara ran after them, screaming, her sneakers slipping on the ice arms wrapped around herself in a useless attempt to preserve heat. The red taillights grew smaller, dimmer, swallowed by the curtain of falling snow. She ran until her lungs burned, and her legs gave out until she fell face first into a snowdrift and came up gasping, ice coating her eyelashes. The silence that followed was absolute. No engine sound, no human voices, no sign of civilization in any direction. Just the wind moving through the trees, the soft whisper of snow, no, falling on snow, and the sound of her own ragged breathing growing slower, shallower. She was alone in Dead Man's Gulch, and the cold was already winning. Alara walked because stopping meant dying. That was the only thought her brain could hold on to as the hypothermia crept deeper into her core. One foot in front of the other. Keep moving. Stay awake. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, teaching her about survival when she was 7 years old, the two of them hiking the ridge trail in early spring. Hypothermia is a liar, Ellie. It'll tell you to rest. It'll tell you to sit down just for a minute. Don't listen. The moment you stop moving, you stop living. But walking in knee-deep snow with soaked shoes and no coat was like wading through concrete. Every step took monumental effort. Her jeans were frozen stiff below the knee, the denim scraping against her skin with every movement. Her hands had gone from painful to numb, the fingers stiff and unresponsive. She'd stopped shivering 10 minutes ago, which she remembered was a bad sign, something about her body conserving energy for vital organs, abandoning the extremities. The forest around her was a nightmare landscape of shadow and white. The pine trees rose like giant sentinels, their branches heavy with snow, occasionally dumping their loads with soft thumping sounds that made her jump. The moon was hidden behind storm clouds, offering no light. She navigated by instinct and luck, trying to maintain a straight line, trying not to circle back on her own tracks like lost hikers always did. She had no idea which direction led to safety. The enforcers had taken so many turns on dark logging roads that her mental map was useless. East might lead to Highway 12 eventually, or it might lead deeper into the gulch. West was probably Shadowmere Dominion territory, which meant AlphaKing Blackthorn, which meant certain death. North and south were anybody's guess. So she just walked, focusing on the mechanics of movement, because thinking about the hopelessness of her situation would break her. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. A rhythm, a mantra, a denial of the reality that she was going to die out here alone at 18 years old, having never kissed anyone, never traveled beyond Montana, never figured out why her wolf wouldn't come. The wind picked up, driving the snow horizontally into her face. She tried to shield her eyes with one hand, but her arm felt like it belonged to someone else, responding sluggishly to commands. Her face was numb, a wooden mask that didn't feel like part of her body anymore. She stumbled over a hidden root and went down hard on her knees, the impact barely registering through the numbness. "Get up," her father's voice again, stern and loving simultaneously. "Ashfords don't quit, Ellie girl. We adapt. We survive. We're stronger than we look." But was she? She'd never shifted, never proven she had the Ashford strength everyone talked about in hushed tones around the pack house. Richard Ashford had been legendary, they said. The best tracker, the smartest strategist, the most loyal beta Silver Pine Ridge ever had. And what was his daughter? A defect, a disappointment, genetic garbage that even her own pack couldn't tolerate. Alara forced herself to stand. Her legs shook, threatening to collapse again. The world tilted sideways, and she realized she was experiencing the first stages of delirium. Not good. Very not good. She needed shelter, needed to get out of the wind, needed to preserve what little core heat remained. Through the swirling snow, she spotted something, a darker mass against the white. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, and saw it was a massive pine tree, ancient and gnarled, its lower branches sweeping nearly to the ground in a natural shelter. The kind her father used to point out on their hikes. "See that, Ellie? In a blizzard, those low branches create a dead airspace. Not warm, but warmer than exposed. That's where animals wait out storms." She stumbled toward it, falling twice more before reaching the tree. The space beneath the branches was cramped but protected, the ground covered with years of accumulated needles, relatively dry compared to the surrounding snow. Alara crawled in her body, moving on pure survival autopilot, and curled into the tightest ball she could manage, trying to minimize surface area, trying to trap whatever heat her dying body still generated. The wind howled outside her shelter. Snow accumulated on the branches above, slowly sealing her in a tomb of white and green. She closed her eyes, not sleeping, but not quite conscious, either, drifting in that dangerous gray space between awareness and shutdown. Images floated through her mind. Her father's face, the way he looked before the accident, strong and certain, smiling as he showed her how to read animal tracks. Her mother, who she'd never met, who died bringing Alara into the world, existing only in one faded photograph Richard kept in his wallet. The pack house barn, warm and full of life, forever close to her now. Vivian's cruel smile, Garrett's cold blue eyes, and that tiny jaw twitch that meant he was lying. Wait, that detail snagged in her dimming consciousness. Why would Garrett be nervous when he looked at her? Why would an alpha fear a girl with no wolf? Unless he knew something. Unless there was a reason he'd insisted on those daily vitamins from Nurse Greta starting the year after her father died. Unless the hunting accident wasn't an accident. Unless Alara's eyes flew open. The pieces were there, scattered fragments, that her hypothermic brain was somehow assembling into a pattern. Her father's mysterious death. The immediate implementation of vitamin protocol that no other pack member received. Garrett's father dying suddenly 3 years ago, just as Garrett came of age. That jaw twitch whenever anyone mentioned the Ashford bloodline. Vivian's expensive lifestyle funded by pack resources that were supposed to be communal. They were afraid of something. Afraid of her. But why? She tried to hold on to the thought, but it was slipping away like water through frozen fingers. The cold was too deep now, invasive, shutting down her body system by system. Her heartbeat slowed, the gaps between pulses growing longer. Her breathing became shallow, each breath requiring conscious effort. She felt drowsy, tempted by the warm numbness that promised peace if she just let go, just stop fighting, just sleep. I'm sorry, Dad. The thought drifted through her fading consciousness. I tried. I really tried. But I'm not strong like you. I don't have what it takes. She closed her eyes again. The darkness was welcoming, soft as velvet, promising an end to pain and cold and disappointment. She sank into it, barely aware of her body anymore, becoming one with the frozen forest. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard something. A low, mechanical rumble, deep and powerful like thunder, rolling across the earth. But that didn't make sense. There were no roads nearby, no reason for anyone to be driving through Dead Man's Gulch in a blizzard. It was probably a hallucination, her dying brain conjuring phantom rescue. The sound grew louder, accompanied now by something else. A heartbeat. Not her own sluggish, failing heart, but something external, strong and steady, and impossibly loud. It seemed to sync with her dying pulse, as if trying to drag her back from the edge by sheer force of rhythm. Then light, bright and white and piercing through her shelter of pine branches. The mechanical rumble became the unmistakable sound of a powerful vehicle very close, stopping nearby. Doors opened, voices shouted male and urgent, but Alara was too far gone to process it. The darkness had her now, pulling her down into cold and silence. Her last conscious thought was strange and disconnected. The monster found me, after all. At least it'll be quick. Then nothing, just the vast, empty peace of shut down, her body surrendering to the Montana winter that had claimed so many others before her. Ronan Blackthorne hated diplomatic inspection tours, with a passion that bordered on homicidal. He was the AlphaKing of the Northern Coalition, the ruler of 40 packs, spanning Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakota's commander of the most powerful werewolf alliance in North America. He should be in his penthouse office in Billings, handling logistics, training his elite guard, managing the complex political web that held the coalition together. He should not be driving through a godforsaken blizzard in the middle of nowhere just to make token appearances at border pack territories and smile for regional alphas who needed their egos stroked. Sir, the sensors are picking up heavy drift ahead. We should slow down. Cole Reeves spoke from the driver's seat of the armored Cadillac Escalade, his voice calm and professional. Cole was Ronan's head of security, former Marine, and one of the few people on Earth who could suggest caution to the AlphaKing without getting his head bitten off. Literally. Keep the pace. Ronan stared out the window at the white void beyond, seeing nothing but his own reflection in the bulletproof glass. I want to be back at Ironwood Lodge before midnight. This meeting with Silver Pine Ridge can wait until tomorrow. Garrett Vaughn can cool his heels in the guest quarters and learn some patience. Ronan was 45 years old, 6'5" of pure muscle and controlled violence, with black hair silvering at the temples and eyes that shifted between human gray and wolf gold depending on his mood. Right now they were somewhere in between, steel with flecks of amber reflecting his irritation at the wasted evening. He wore an Italian suit that cost more than most pack members earned in a month, but it was built for movement, tailored to accommodate the heavy muscle of a man who could shift into a massive black wolf at will. He'd been AlphaKing for 12 years, taking the position at 33 after his predecessor died in a challenge fight. Since then, he'd transformed the Northern Coalition from a loose alliance of bickering packs into a unified power structure with laws, enforcement, and prosperity that drew wolves from across the country seeking stability. He'd done it with a combination of military precision, learned during his years in naval special warfare, ruthless political maneuvering, and the kind of raw alpha dominance that made other wolves instinctively bare their throats. But for all his power, all his control, all his carefully constructed empire, Ronan had one glaring weakness. He was unmated. 45 years old, biologically in his prime, ruler of hundreds of wolves, and completely alone. No mate bond, no Luna, no partner to share the crushing weight of leadership. His wolf, the massive black beast named Titan, had been growing increasingly restless over the years, pacing inside Ronan's mind like a caged animal searching for something that couldn't be found. The mate bond was supposed to be undeniable when it happened. You'd catch their scent and know instantly, a recognition so deep it bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the soul. The bond would snap into place like a lock clicking home, two halves of one whole finally united. Ronan had smelled thousands of wolves over his lifetime, attended gatherings across 3 continents, met females from every major pack in existence. Nothing, Not even a flicker of interest from Titan. He was starting to suspect his mate didn't exist, that whatever genetic lottery created mate bonds had skipped him entirely. Just another way fate liked to mock him. Give him everything except the one thing that mattered. The convoy consisted of 3 Escalades bulletproof and equipped with run-flat tires carrying Ronan's personal security detail. They maintained formation even on the treacherous, icy logging road, Cole driving the lead vehicle with the precision of someone who'd navigated far worse terrain under enemy fire. Behind them, vehicles 2 and 3 followed at exact intervals their headlights, creating a tunnel of light through the storm. Ronan checked his phone, scrolling through reports. Border skirmishes near the Dakotas. A dispute over hunting rights in Wyoming territory. 3 packs requesting permission to expand their boundaries. An illegal fight ring busted in Helena, humans paying to watch werewolves battle for entertainment. He made notes, delegated tasks, stayed busy because inactivity made him think too much. Suddenly, Titan slammed against the inside of his skull with enough force to make Ronan gasp. The wolf had been dormant, a sleeping presence in the back of his mind, but now it exploded into full consciousness, howling one word that reverberated through every nerve: mate. Stop the car. Ronan's voice wasn't a shout. It was a low, vibrating growl that carried Alpha Command, the kind of order that bypassed free will and hit the wolf brain directly. Cole's foot slammed the brake before his human mind even processed the words. The Escalade skidded on ice, fishtailing briefly before the all-wheel drive caught and brought them to a lurching stop. The vehicles behind them braked hard, their drivers confused but trained well enough not to rear-end the lead car. Sir Cole looked in the rearview mirror, his expression showing the controlled alarm of a soldier who knows something's wrong but doesn't know what. We're in the middle of Dead Man's Gulch. There's nothing out here but bears and ice. Ronan didn't answer. He was drowning in sensation, overwhelmed by a scent that shouldn't exist in this frozen wasteland. It cut through the smell of diesel, the pine sap, the cold sterility of snow, and reached inside his chest to grab his heart. The scent was faint, buried under layers of winter and wind, but unmistakable. Vanilla and ozone, like the air right before a lightning strike. Sweet but wild, soft but dangerous. Female. Young. Terrified. Dying. His mate. His mate was here somewhere in this forest, and she was fading. I said stop. Ronan already had the door open before the vehicle had completely halted the blizzard assaulting him with wind and ice. He didn't feel the cold. His wolf had taken over, completely superhearing primal instinct, overriding human logic with the singular imperative to find her, protect her, save her. Alpha? Wait, Cole was scrambling out of the driver's seat, drawing his sidearm on instinct. The security detail from the other vehicles was deploying, forming defensive positions, scanning for threats. They couldn't understand what was happening, couldn't smell what Ronan smelled, couldn't feel the mate bond trying to establish itself across the distance. Ronan didn't wait for them. He vaulted over the guardrail and plunged into the deep snow of the forest line, moving with speed and power that defied human physics. He wasn't running like a man. He was hunting like his wolf, following the scent thread that was already fading, already dying, already slipping away from him, just as he'd found it. No. The word was a snarl, a rejection of reality, a refusal to accept loss. Titan howled inside his mind, a sound of pure anguish and rage. Not now. Not when we finally found her. She cannot die. We will not allow it. Ronan tore through frozen brambles that shredded his expensive suit pants, crashed through drifts that would have swallowed a normal man, used preternatural strength to move trees that blocked his path. His security team tried to keep up, shouting questions and coordinates into their radios, but they were human slow compared to an alpha following a mate bond. The scent was stronger now, but wrong, soured by the smell of dying. Not death yet, but close. So close. Ronan's heart hammered against his ribs, his hands shaking with something he hadn't felt in decades: fear. Not the tactical fear of combat, the kind you could use in control. This was existential terror. The fear of losing something you didn't know you needed until the moment you found it. There, beneath an ancient pine, its branches heavy with snow, a dark shape that didn't belong to the forest. Ronan fell to his knees, his expensive suit pants soaking in the slush, and frantically brushed away the snow that had begun to cover her. She was tiny. That was his first coherent thought. A girl barely 5'6" with dark hair plastered to her skull, skin so pale it was nearly blue, lips the color of bruises. She wore only a thin shirt and jeans, no coat. The clothing inadequate for surviving 10 minutes in this temperature, let alone however long she'd been here. Ice crystals coated her eyelashes. Her chest wasn't moving. His mate. His mate was dead. No. Ronan's bellow shook snow from the trees above. Cole, get the medic now. He didn't wait for a response. Ronan ripped off his heavy wool coat and wrapped it around her, then pulled her stiff body against his chest, tearing open his suit vest and shirt so her frozen cheek pressed against his bare skin. Werewolves ran hot, maintaining body temperatures around 108 degrees. He needed to be her furnace, her lifeline, the warmth that called her back from the edge. Breathe. It was a command alpha voice, the tone that forced obedience. Her body didn't respond. He pressed 2 fingers against her throat, searching for a pulse. Nothing. He repositioned, trying the other side of her neck, desperate. They're so faint it was almost imperceptible, a thread of heartbeat, skipping every other contraction, her body fighting a losing battle against hypothermia. Mate is gone, Titan whimpered inside his mind. We failed her. We were too late. No, Ronan snarled at his own wolf. She is not gone. She does not get to leave. We just found her. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and breathed air into her lungs, watching her chest rise with his breath. Then he placed his hands over her heart and compressed once, twice, 3 times the CPR rhythm drilled into him during SEAL training. 2 breaths, 30 compressions. 2 breaths, 30 compressions. He lost track of how many cycles, time becoming meaningless, his entire world narrowing to the blue-lipped girl who was supposed to be his future. Come back to me, his voice broke on the words. I just found you. You do not get to die. Come back. He felt it then, a flutter against his palm. A heartbeat weak and thready, but there. Her chest moved on its own, a shallow breath, then another. Not strong, not stable, but alive. Barely, impossibly alive. Sir. Cole appeared at his side holding a trauma kit, his eyes wide at the scene before him. Is she? She's alive. Ronan's voice was rough, his throat tight with emotions he didn't have names for. But barely. Get Dr. Merrick on the radio. Tell him we have a critical hypothermia case, probable stage 3, female approximately 18 years old. Tell him to prep the medical wing at Ironwood Lodge. Tell him if she dies, I will burn the entire facility to the ground with him in it. Cole's face went pale, but he nodded and pulled out his radio. In the distance, the rest of the security team was crashing through the forest toward them, flashlight beams cutting through the dark. Ronan gathered the girl into his arms, stood, and started walking back toward the road. She weighed nothing, a fragile bundle of bones and frozen flesh, her dark hair falling over his arm like a silk curtain. This close, even through the smell of hypothermia and fear, he could detect her underlying scent. Vanilla and ozone, yes, but also something else. Something ancient and powerful that made Titan go very still inside his mind. This girl wasn't just his mate. She was something more, something that had been hidden, suppressed, buried deliberately. He could smell it in her blood, could sense it in the way his wolf responded to her presence. This was old bloodline, royal bloodline, the kind that hadn't walked the earth in generations. Who are you? Ronan whispered, looking down at her unconscious face as he carried her through the forest. What are you and who tried to kill you? Because that's what this was. The missing coat, the inadequate clothing, the location deep in Dead Man's Gulch, far from any packed territory or human settlement. This wasn't an accident or bad luck. This was deliberate. Someone had dumped her here to die. Someone had tried to murder his mate. And when Ronan found out who, when he discovered which pack had thrown away this precious girl like garbage, he was going to show them exactly why alphas feared the AlphaKing. He was going to teach them that some mistakes you don't get to walk away from. The convoy was in chaos when they reached the road security personnel, forming a perimeter. Cole barking orders into his radio, the medical specialist from Vehicle 3, already preparing the interior of the lead Escalade for emergency transport. Ronan climbed in, still holding the girl against his chest, unwilling to let her go, even as the medic tried to work. We need to get her flat, start an IV, check her vitals, do it around me. Ronan's tone left no room for argument. She stays against my skin. My body heat is the only thing keeping her alive right now. The medic nodded, recognizing the futility of arguing with an alpha in protective mode, and worked as best he could in the cramped space. IV line in her arm, oxygen mask over her face, thermal blankets piled on top of Ronan's coat. Her core temperature when they finally got a reading was 78 degrees, critical, potentially fatal. Most humans didn't survive anything below 82, but she wasn't fully human. Ronan could sense the dormant wolf inside her locked away somehow, suppressed by something artificial and cruel. That wolf, sleeping or silenced, was the only reason she'd survived this long. Some vestigial werewolf healing factor working on autopilot, keeping her alive just long enough for him to find her. Drive, Ronan commanded. Cole didn't ask where. He already knew. Ironwood Lodge, the AlphaKing's fortress, was 45 minutes away under normal conditions. Tonight, with roads of ice and a medical emergency, Cole made it in 28, the Escalade's engine roaring as they flew through the storm, the other vehicles struggling to keep pace. Ronan held his mate the entire way, feeling her weak heartbeat against his chest, watching the shallow rise and fall of her breathing, memorizing every detail of her face. She was beautiful in a fragile way, like something carved from ice and winter moonlight. Too thin, her cheekbones, too sharp, signs of long-term malnutrition. Scars on her hands, faint white lines that spoke of old injuries poorly healed. Someone had hurt her. Not just the hypothermia, but before that. Someone had been hurting her for a long time. The evidence was written on her body like a map of suffering. Ronan felt rage building inside his chest, cold and controlled, and absolutely lethal. Titan was already planning retribution, already imagining the taste of blood and the sound of screams. But first she had to survive. First he had to save her. Revenge could wait. Her life couldn't. They screamed into the underground garage of Ironwood Lodge, the massive log and stone structure that served as the coalition's headquarters. Dr. Owen Merrick was waiting with a crash cart and a team of nurses, his silver hair disheveled, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Trauma Bay 1 is ready. Merrick's voice was clipped efficient. What's her status? Stage 3 hypothermia, core temp 78, heart rate 42, and irregular breathing, shallow, no response to stimuli. Ronan climbed out of the vehicle, still holding her, ignoring the medical team's attempts to transfer her to a gurney. I'm carrying her. Show me the way. Merrick knew better than to argue. He led them through the service corridors at a jog, the trauma team keeping pace into the medical wing that rivaled any hospital in the state. The room was sterile and bright, equipped with everything needed for emergency supernatural medicine. Ronan finally reluctantly laid his mate on the bed, stepping back just far enough to let the team work. They cut away her frozen clothes, revealing more evidence of abuse, more scars, bruises, in various stages of healing. Merrick's jaw tightened as he worked, his experienced eyes cataloging every injury. Start warm saline. Get her on the warming blanket. Core temperature monitoring. Merrick's hands moved with practiced precision. We need to rewarm her slowly or the shock will kill her. And someone get me a full blood panel. I want to know what we're dealing with. One of the nurses drew blood, multiple vials, rushing them to the lab. Ronan stood in the corner, his shirt still open, his expensive suit ruined, watching every movement. Cole appeared at his side, silent support, ready to do whatever was needed. The minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. The medical team worked with focused intensity, slowly bringing her core temperature up, monitoring her heart for arrhythmias, checking for frostbite damage. Her color improved incrementally, the deathly blue fading to pale white, then to something closer to natural. Her heartbeat strengthened, the gaps between beats becoming regular. She's stabilizing, Merrick finally said, his shoulders sagging with relief. Core temp is up to 91. Heart rhythm normalizing. She's fighting her way back. Ronan felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. Will she make it? Merrick was quiet for a long moment, studying the monitors. She should be dead. Hypothermia at that stage, for that duration in those conditions, most humans don't survive. Hell, most wolves don't survive. Whatever is inside this girl, whatever bloodline she carries, it's the only reason she's still breathing. What do you mean? Ronan stepped closer to the bed, looking down at her unconscious face. What bloodline? Merrick held up a printout from the lab, his expression troubled. The blood panel. Alpha, she has Aconitum vulparia in her system. A lot of it. Wolfsbane synthetic strain, concentrated dosage. Based on the metabolite markers, she's been ingesting it regularly for years. Someone has been systematically poisoning this girl since childhood. The room went very quiet. The nurses exchanged shocked looks. Cole's hand moved to his sidearm instinctively, a threat response to information that changed everything. Ronan stared at the printout, rage building behind his eyes until they glowed pure gold. Wolfsbane was illegal under coalition law, banned except for very specific medical applications used historically as a weapon against werewolves. In high enough concentrations, it was fatal. In lower doses maintained over time, it could suppress the shifting gene, could lock a wolf inside human skin, could turn a supernatural creature into something weak and helpless. Someone had been dosing his mate with wolfsbane for years, deliberately, systematically, turning her into a prison for her own wolf. And then when she couldn't shift on her 18th birthday, they'd thrown her away to die. Find out who she is. Ronan's voice was dangerously calm, the kind of quiet that preceded volcanic eruptions. Full background check. I want to know her name, her pack, her family history. I want to know who did this to her, and I want it now. Cole nodded and disappeared, already pulling out his phone. Merrick moved closer to Ronan, lowering his voice. There's something else, Alpha. The blood markers, the latent DNA, I've only seen this pattern once before in a very old textbook about extinct bloodlines. She's not just any wolf. If I'm reading this correctly, if the wolfsbane hasn't permanently damaged her DNA, this girl is White Wolf, White Wolf. The words hit Ronan like a physical blow. The Shadowmere bloodline had been considered extinct for 20 years, wiped out in a series of mysterious deaths and hunting accidents that nobody questioned too closely. White wolves were stronger than average alphas, carried royal blood, had powers that bordered on mythical. They'd ruled the northern territories before the coalition existed, before Ronan's time, before living memory for most wolves. And someone had found one. A survivor, the last of her line. And instead of protecting her, honoring her, placing her in a position of power, they'd poisoned her, suppressed her, tried to erase her from existence. Who would do that? Ronan asked softly. Who would be threatened by a child carrying that bloodline? Merrick shook his head. Anyone who wanted to maintain power without challenge. Anyone who knew that a white wolf, when she came into her full strength, could rival even an AlphaKing. Anyone who wanted her heritage eliminated before she could claim it. The pieces were assembling in Ronan's mind, a conspiracy forming from fragments of evidence, an illegal dumping in Dead Man's Gulch, long-term wolfsbane poisoning, a girl with royal blood hidden and suppressed. This wasn't random cruelty. This was calculated genocide. And whoever orchestrated it had just made the fatal mistake of throwing away Ronan's mate. He would find them. He would learn their names, their ranks, their justifications. He would drag them before the Coalition Council and make them answer for every scar on her skin, every year stolen from her life. And then when justice had been served through proper channels, when the law had done its work, he would let Titan loose. Because some crimes demanded more than tribunals. Some crimes required teeth and blood, in the kind of primal retribution that reminded everyone why alphas were feared. But first she needed to wake up. First she needed to survive. First Ronan needed to see her eyes open and hear her voice and know that his mate, his queen, the girl he'd spent 45 years waiting for, was going to live. He pulled a chair next to her bed and sat down, taking her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. Her fingers were still cold, but warming, slowly returning to life. He held on and waited, patient as a hunter, while the girl who would change everything fought her way back from death. Outside, the blizzard continued to rage. Inside Ironwood Lodge, the AlphaKing kept vigil over a girl who didn't know she was destined to be his queen. And in the shadows, whoever had tried to kill her had no idea that their time was running out, measured in hours counted down to retribution. The storm was just beginning. 3 days of darkness. 3 days of fever dreams and fragmented consciousness of voices that sounded underwater, and sensations that felt like they belonged to someone else's body. Alara drifted through the void, sometimes aware enough to register pain, sometimes so far gone she couldn't remember her own name. In the dream, she was 8 years old again, watching her father pack their bags in the middle of the night. "Hurry, Ellie girl, we don't have much time." His face was urgent, scared in a way she'd never seen before. Richard Ashford, the unshakable beta, was terrified. "They have to believe we're just going on a camping trip. If they suspect we're running, they'll kill us both." "Who, Daddy Young?" Alara asked, clutching her stuffed wolf. "Who wants to hurt us?" But the dream shifted before he could answer, time jumping forward to the hunting accident. That wasn't an accident. Her father's body carried back to the pack house on a stretcher, his throat torn out, the official story already being written. Grizzly attack. Tragic. Quick. Move along, nothing to see here. Then Garrett Vaughn's father, the old alpha, standing over her father's grave with an expression that wasn't grief. Relief maybe. Satisfaction. Speaking to someone just out of frame the fathers dealt with. Now we manage the girl. Keep her weak. Keep her human. The Shadowmere bloodline dies with him. Shadowmere. The name echoed through her fever dream, familiar and foreign simultaneously. That wasn't her surname. She was Ashford. Wasn't she? Or had that been a lie too, another layer of deception wrapped around her entire existence? The dreams grew darker. Nurse Greta's kind face twisting with regret as she handed young Alara a vitamin each morning. I'm sorry, child. I don't have a choice. They have my son. If I don't do this, they'll kill him. Please understand. Please forgive me. 10 years of vitamins that weren't vitamins. 10 years of poison administered with maternal gentleness, slowly killing the wolf that was supposed to emerge. 10 years of being told she was defective when she was actually being murdered one dose at a time. The fever dreams shattered into moments of half-awareness. Strong arms carrying her. A deep voice speaking words she couldn't process but felt in her bones. You're safe now. I've got you. Stay with me, little wolf. The voice was anchor and command, simultaneously dragging her back from the edge every time that she tried to slip away into permanent darkness. Sometimes she surfaced enough to feel things. The burn of an IV in her arm, the scratch of sheets against hypersensitive skin, the warmth of someone's hand holding hers, a presence that never left a heartbeat that wasn't her own, but somehow kept her anchored to living. Other times she was drowning, again pulled under by nightmares of snow and cold, and Vivian's laugh echoing across the frozen gulch. On the third day, Alara woke up. The transition wasn't gradual. One moment she was dreaming about her father's journal, the old leather-bound book he'd kept hidden under the barn floorboards, and the next her eyes snapped open, and she was staring at a wooden beam ceiling she didn't recognize. Not the pack house barn, not the bunkhouse, not anywhere she'd ever been. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in her body screamed protest, stiff and aching, like she'd been beaten. Her head spun the room, tilting sideways before reluctantly righting itself. She was in a bed, in an actual bed with clean sheets and a thick comforter, not the thin sleeping bag on a cot she was used to. The room smelled like pine and wood smoke, masculine, but not threatening, expensive in a way that made her acutely aware of her own poverty. A fireplace crackled across the room, real logs burning behind an iron screen. Heavy curtains covered what she assumed were windows. The furniture was solid wood, handcrafted, built to last generations. This wasn't a medical facility. This was someone's private quarters. Easy. The voice came from a chair near the fireplace, and Alara's head snapped toward it so fast her neck cracked. A man unfolded from the shadows, standing slowly, hands visible and empty in a gesture of non-threat. Don't try to move yet. You've been unconscious for 3 days. He was massive. That was Alara's first coherent thought. Not just tall, but built like he was carved from granite, broad shoulders and muscular frame that filled the space with presence. He wore dark jeans and a simple black thermal shirt that did nothing to hide the military build underneath. His hair was black with silver at the temples, his face all hard angles and weathered strength. But it was his eyes that caught her gray with flecks of gold, intelligent and intense, looking at her, like she was something precious and fragile that might break if he moved too fast. He was also the most attractive man Alara had ever seen in her life, which was a stupid thing to notice when she should be figuring out where she was and why she wasn't dead. Where am I? Her voice came out as a croak, her throat raw and dry. She tried again. Who are you? You're in Ironwood Lodge. The man took a single step closer, then stopped, giving her space. My name is Ronan Blackthorn. You're safe here, Alara. No one is going to hurt you. Alara, he knew her name. Ironwood Lodge. That name triggered something in her memory, something she'd heard whispered around the Silver Pine Ridge pack house with equal parts reverence and fear. Ironwood Lodge was the headquarters of the Northern Coalition, which meant this man, this Ronan Blackthorn, was "You're the AlphaKing." The words came out as a whisper, horror and disbelief mixing in her chest. Oh God, you're going to kill me. I'm Rogue. I'm on your territory without permission. I stop. Ronan's voice carried alpha command, not cruel but absolutely authoritative, the kind of tone that made her wolf instincts slam her mouth shut even though she couldn't shift. You are not Rogue. You were declared Rogue illegally by an alpha who had no right to exile you. And you're not on my territory without permission. You're here because I brought you here. Because I found you dying in Dead Man's Gulch 3 nights ago. The memories crashed back. The rejection ceremony, Brock and Kane throwing her in the truck, the long drive into the wilderness, the theft of her hoodie, the cold, the endless killing cold, walking until she couldn't walk anymore, the pine tree shelter, closing her eyes and accepting death. I should be dead. Alara looked down at her hands, flexing fingers that should have been blackened with frostbite. She was wearing clean clothes, soft cotton pajamas that definitely weren't hers. Someone had bathed her, changed her, cared for her while she was unconscious. The thought made her feel vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with physical weakness. Yes, Ronan's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. You should be dead. Stage 3, hypothermia, core temperature, 78 degrees, no heartbeat when I found you. By every medical standard, you shouldn't have survived. But you did. Why? Alara met his eyes, searching for the trap, the cruelty, the inevitable betrayal. Nothing in her life had prepared her for kindness from Alphas. Why would you save me? I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I don't even have a wolf. I'm just a defective human that my pack threw away. Something dangerous flashed in Ronan's eyes, a glimpse of the predator beneath the controlled surface. You are not defective. You are not nothing. And whoever told you that you don't have a wolf was lying. He moved closer to the bed, not threatening but deliberate, and Alara caught his scent for the first time. Pine and leather and something darker like smoke from a winter fire. It hit her nervous system like an electric shock, familiar and foreign, and completely overwhelming. Her body responded without her permission, relaxing muscles she hadn't realized were tensed, leaning slightly toward him, as if pulled by invisible strings. What are you doing to me? She pressed back against the headboard, frightened by her own response. Why do you smell like that? Ronan smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was hate and hopeful and complicated in ways Alara didn't have the experience to interpret. Because you're my mate, Alara. That's why I could find you when no one else would have. That's why my wolf led me straight to you in the middle of a blizzard. That's why you're here, safe and healing, instead of frozen in that gulch. The mate bond brought us together. Mate, the word didn't make sense. Mates were for wolves, for shifters, for people who belonged to the supernatural world in ways Alara never had. You can't be my mate. I'm human. I can't shift. You're not human, Ronan interrupted gently. And you can shift. Your wolf is inside you, has been your whole life. She's just been locked away. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper, and handed it to her. Alara took it with shaking hands, unfolding what turned out to be a lab report dense with medical terminology she didn't understand. But some words jumped out clear and damning: aconitum vulparia. Chronic exposure. Therapeutic levels maintained for approximately 10 years. Suppression of lycanthropic gene expression. What is this? But even as she asked, pieces were clicking together in her mind. The vitamins. Nurse Greta's guilty face. Garrett's nervousness whenever anyone mentioned her father. It's proof that you've been poisoned since you were 8 years old. Ronan's voice was quiet but edged with barely controlled rage. Someone has been feeding you wolfsbane for a decade, Alara. Deliberately suppressing your wolf. Preventing your shift, keeping you weak and human. This wasn't an accident or bad luck. This was attempted murder. Slow, calculated, and sustained over years. The room tilted again, but this time it wasn't from physical weakness. Alara's entire understanding of her life was cracking reality, reorganizing itself around this new information. She wasn't defective. She was sabotaged. She wasn't weak. She was actively being kept weak. Her father's death, the vitamins, the rejection, the dumping in the snow, it was all connected, all part of some conspiracy she was only beginning to understand. Why? Her voice broke on the word. Why would they do this to me? I'm nobody. I'm just the daughter of a dead beta. What possible threat could I be? Ronan sat down on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could feel his body heat, far enough that she didn't feel trapped. That's what we need to figure out. But Alara, I don't think your father was just a beta. I think he was hiding something. Something important enough that someone killed him for it and spent 10 years making sure his daughter never discovered her heritage. Heritage. The word from her fever dreams. Shadowmere. Alara closed her eyes, reaching for fragments of memories she wasn't sure were real. There's a journal. My father kept a journal. He hid it under the floorboards in the barn third board from the wall near the tack room. If there are answers, they're in that journal. When she opened her eyes, Ronan was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. How do you know about the journal if it was hidden? I just remembered. Alara shook her head, frustrated by her own confusion. Or maybe I always knew. He showed me once when I was little. Made me promise never to tell anyone, never to look at it unless something happened to him. After he died, I was too scared. The new Alpha moved me out of our cabin into the bunkhouse. I never had a chance to go back for it. Ronan pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. Within seconds, he had it to his ear. Cole, I need a retrieval team ready in 30 minutes. Silver Pine Ridge Territory covert operation. There's a journal hidden in their pack house barn, third floorboard from the wall near the tack room. Get it and get out without being seen. He paused, listening. I don't care if it's technically theft. That journal belongs to Alara, and her pack forfeited their property rights when they tried to murder her. Get it done. He ended the call and looked back at Alara. My head of security, Cole Reeves, former Marine best tactical operator in the coalition. If that journal exists, he'll get it. Just like that, Alara couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. You're sending your people to steal from an Alpha's territory because I mentioned a maybe journal from a maybe memory. Not stealing, recovering. And yes, just like that. Ronan's eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. You're my mate, Alara. That means your enemies are my enemies. Your pain is my pain. Your truth is my priority. Whatever is in that journal, whatever your father was hiding, we're going to find it. And then we're going to make everyone who hurt you answer for it. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction, was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Because Alara wasn't used to protection. She didn't know how to accept help without waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the kindness to curdle into cruelty. Every instinct screamed at her to mistrust this, to find the trap, to protect herself before the inevitable betrayal. But her body betrayed her. When Ronan reached out and took her hand, that same electric sensation rolled up her arm, warm and right and undeniable. The mate bond, if that's what this was, didn't care about her trust issues or her survival instincts. It recognized him as hers with a certainty that bypassed logic. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to trust you. Everyone who was supposed to protect me either died or tried to kill me. I don't know how to believe this is real. Ronan squeezed her hand gently. Then don't trust me yet. Trust yourself. Your instincts brought you this far, kept you alive through things that should have killed you. Listen to what your gut tells you. If I'm lying, if this is a trap, your wolf will know. Can you feel her, Alara, deep inside, past the years of poison? Can you sense her? Alara closed her eyes and tried. At first, there was nothing, just the empty space where her wolf should have been. But then, so faint she might have imagined it, she felt something. A presence, a consciousness that wasn't quite her own, but was part of her. Sleeping, not dead, caged, not absent. And that presence that locked away wolf was straining toward Ronan like a flower turning toward the sun. She feels you, Alara admitted, opening her eyes. I don't understand how or why, but she knows you. She wants you, Ronan finished. She wants you to trust me because mates protect each other. It's written into our DNA, Alara. I literally could not hurt you if I tried. The bond won't allow it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ronan called permission to enter, and a silver-haired man in a white coat stepped inside carrying a medical tablet. He looked to be in his late 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the air of someone who'd seen everything and been surprised by very little. Miss Ashford, the man nodded to her respectfully. I'm Dr. Owen Merrick, the Coalition's chief physician. I'm glad to see you awake. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, then frozen, then thawed. Alara attempted a weak smile, so pretty much like you'd expect. Merrick chuckled, but his examination was thorough and professional. He checked her vitals, examined her fingers and toes for frostbite damage, asked questions about pain levels and mobility. Finally, he stepped back, consulting his tablet. You're healing remarkably well. No permanent tissue damage, no neurological deficits from the hypothermia. Your werewolf healing factor kicked in once we got the wolfsbane out of your system. He looked at Ronan. She's cleared for light activity. No shifting attempts yet, not until we've confirmed the detox is complete. But she can walk, eat solid food, start building her strength back. How long until the poison is completely gone? Alara asked. How long until I can try to shift? Merrick hesitated, exchanging a look with Ronan. That's complicated. The wolfsbane has been in your system for 10 years, Miss Ashford. We've flushed the active compound, but the metabolites have built up in your tissues, your bone marrow, your nervous system. Full detox will take time, and it won't be pleasant. Define not pleasant. Ilara had learned to read medical euphemisms during her years of pack life. Not pleasant usually meant agonizing. You'll experience withdrawal symptoms, fever, shaking, nausea, hallucinations. Your body will be relearning how to be what it was always meant to be. The process can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks, and there's no way to accelerate it without risking permanent damage to your shifting ability. Merrick's expression was sympathetic. I won't lie to you, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever endured. But at the end of it, your wolf will be free. When do we start? Ilara surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. The broken pack, Omega would have begged for more time, more preparation. But something had shifted during her near-death experience. She'd walked to the edge of existence and stepped back. What was a few weeks of pain compared to that? You're sure? Ronan studied her face. We can wait. Give you time to process everything. I've waited 10 years, Ilara met his eyes. 10 years of poison. 10 years of being told I was broken. 10 years of watching other wolves shift while I stayed human and useless. I don't want to wait anymore. I want my wolf back. I want to know what I'm supposed to be. Ronan smiled, and this time it reached his eyes, transforming his face from intimidating to devastating. Then we start tonight. Merrick set up the medical suite, full monitoring, round-the-clock support, and clear my schedule for the next 3 weeks. Alpha, you have the territorial summit in Wyoming, the tribunal hearings for the Idaho packs. Cancel them. Ronan's tone left no room for argument. Reschedule everything. My mate needs me, and that takes precedence over politics. The coalition can wait. She can't. Merrick nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Ronan turned back to Ilara, taking both her hands this time, his thumbs rubbing gentle circles on her palms. I'm going to be honest with you about what's coming. The detox will be hell. You'll hallucinate, probably relive your worst memories. You'll feel like you're dying. There will be moments when you'll beg me to make it stop, to give you the wolfsbane back, just to end the pain. And I won't. I'll hold you through every second of it, but I won't stop the process, because on the other side of that pain is freedom, is power, is the real you, the one that's been locked away since you were 8 years old. Can you do this, Ilara? Can you trust me to be your anchor through the storm? Ilara thought about her father, about the journal she'd been too afraid to retrieve, about 10 years of poison and lies. She thought about Garrett's jaw twitch and Vivian's cruel smile and the feeling of snow against her skin as she waited to die. She thought about the wolf she'd felt inside, sleeping and caged and desperate to be free. Yes, the word came out strong and clear. I can do this. I want to do this. Then let's get started. Ronan stood, pulling her gently to her feet. Her legs were shaky but held. Together, they walked toward the door, toward the medical suite, toward the pain that would break her down so she could build herself back up into something stronger. Ilara didn't know what she would become when her wolf finally emerged. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: the girl who had been left to freeze in Dead Man's Gulch was gone. Whoever came out of this detox, whoever she was meant to be, would make sure that Garrett Vaughn and everyone who helped him regretted the day they decided to bury the Shadowmere bloodline. They thought they were eliminating a threat. They were actually creating one. And she was going to make sure they understood the difference. The detox suite was located in the medical wing of Ironwood Lodge, a private room with monitoring equipment, a hospital bed, and enough space for Ronan to maintain his vigil. They'd cleared out everything that could be broken during thrashing episodes and padded the sharp corners. It looked like a cage designed to look like a bedroom, and Ilara supposed that's exactly what it was. Dr. Merrick explained the process while hooking her up to monitors. We'll track your vitals constantly: heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, brain activity. If anything becomes life-threatening, we can intervene. But short of that, we let the process run its course. Your body knows how to purge the wolfsbane. We just need to keep you alive while it does. How bad will it get? Ilara asked, watching the monitors light up with her baseline readings. Her heart rate was already elevated, anxiety making the numbers climb. Merrick was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. The worst detox case I ever treated, the patient described it as feeling like their skin was being peeled off from the inside. They said they could feel their bones trying to break and reform their organs, reshaping their entire body, rejecting the human form it had been forced into. And that patient had only been on Wolfsbane for 2 years. You've been on it for 10. Alara felt the blood drain from her face. So what you're saying is it's going to be worse, a lot worse. Probably, but Merrick's expression held something like respect. You survived hypothermia that should have killed you. You survived a decade of systematic poisoning. You survived your own pack, trying to erase you. If anyone can survive this, it's you. Ronan appeared in the doorway carrying blankets, pillows, and a duffel bag. He'd changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, comfortable clothes for a long haul. I'm staying. Before Alara could protest, he held up a hand. Non-negotiable. You don't go through this alone. You're the AlphaKing, Alara gestured at the monitoring equipment the medical setup. Don't you have more important things to do than babysit someone through detox? No. The single word carried absolute conviction. There is nothing more important than this, than you. The certainty in his voice made something crack in Alara's chest, a wall she'd built around herself for protection. She'd spent 10 years believing she was worthless, that her existence was a burden, that nobody would choose her if they had any other option. And here was the most powerful alpha in North America, casually rearranging his entire schedule to sit with her through withdrawal. Thank you. The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. Ronan set up his makeshift camp in the corner, close enough to reach her quickly, but far enough to give her space. The first few hours were almost anticlimactic. Alara felt tired, slightly nauseous, but nothing she couldn't handle. She dozed on and off, aware of Ronan's presence like a warm weight at the edge of her consciousness. Then around midnight, the real detox began. It started as a fever, her temperature spiking to 104 within minutes. Alara threw off the blankets, her skin burning, sweat soaking through her hospital gown. Ronan was there immediately with cold compresses, pressing them against her forehead, her neck, her wrists. I'm so hot. Alara's teeth chattered despite the fever, her body's temperature regulation completely haywire. Why is it so hot in here? It's 65 degrees. Ronan's voice was steady, grounding. It's your body fighting. Just breathe. Focus on my voice. But focusing became impossible as the hallucinations started. The medical suite melted away, replaced by the Silver Pine Ridge barn, and Alara was 8 years old again, watching her father pack their bags. We have to run, Ellie, tonight. They know what you are. They know what your bloodline means. If we stay, they'll kill us both. Daddy, don't go. Young Alara clung to his leg, desperate. Please don't leave me alone. But he did leave. The scene shifted, jumped forward, and she was standing over his body in the woods, his throat torn out, his eyes staring at nothing. The old Alpha Garrett's father stood nearby with blood on his claws. Tragic accident. Such a shame. At least we have his daughter. We can mold her, shape her, make sure she never becomes what he was trying to prevent. The hallucinations shattered, reformed. Now Alara was 12 and Nurse Greta was forcing a vitamin down her throat while she struggled. I'm sorry, child, I'm so sorry. But they have my son. If I don't do this, they'll kill Tommy. Please understand, your life for his. It's not a choice. Then she was 18, standing before the pack, failing to shift while Vivian laughed. Defective little Omega. Genetic waste. You should have died with your father. Let me fix that mistake. The cold. God, the cold. Alara was back in the snow, her body shutting down, ice forming in her veins. This was where she belonged. Dead in the gulch. Food for scavengers. Another disappeared wolf that nobody would remember. Another Alara come back. Ronan's voice cut through the hallucination like a knife. He was leaning over her, his hands framing her face, his eyes glowing gold. You're safe. You're in Ironwood Lodge. The memories can't hurt you anymore. But they could. They were. Every moment of pain, every casual cruelty, every time she'd been told she was nothing, it all crashed over her in waves that felt like drowning. Alara screamed, the sound tearing from her throat, and thrashed against the restraints she didn't remember them putting on. The fever climbed higher. 105, 106. Merrick was there barking orders, nurses rushing in with ice baths and medications. But Ronan never left her side, his hands holding hers, his voice a constant anchor in the chaos. Your father's name was Richard Shadowmere. Ronan spoke clearly, cutting through her delirium. He was the last of the White Wolf bloodline, and he loved you more than anything. He died trying to protect you, trying to get you away from people who wanted to eliminate your heritage. You are not defective. You are not weak. You are the daughter of royalty, and you are mine. The words penetrated the fever fog, something solid to hold on to. Ilara fixed her eyes on Ronan's face, using it as a focal point, a reminder of reality. Shadowmere. That was her real name. Her father had hidden it, changed it to Ashford to protect her. But from whom the days blurred together, a nightmare cycle of fever, hallucination, and brief moments of lucidity. Alara lost track of time, couldn't tell if hours or days had passed. Her body felt like it was being torn apart and reassembled. Wrong bones, aching muscles, cramping her skin, hypersensitive to every touch. Sometimes she was aware enough to register details. Cole Reeves arriving with her father's journal, the leather-bound book she remembered from childhood. Ronan reading it aloud during her few lucid moments, his voice revealing the truth Richard had tried so hard to protect. Your mother's name was Elena Shadowmere. She was the heir to the White Wolf line, stronger than any alpha destined to rule. When she died giving birth to you, her power passed to you through your blood. The old alpha Marcus Vaughn Garrett's father, he knew what you were. He knew that when you came of age, when your wolf emerged, you would be unstoppable. So he made a deal with your father. Hide your heritage, suppress your wolf, and you could live. Refuse and he'd kill you both. Your father tried to run. The journal entries proved it, detailed his planning, his desperate attempt to get 8-year-old Alara away from Silver Pine Ridge. But Marcus caught them, killed Richard, took you back, started the Wolfsbane Protocol. And when Garrett inherited the alpha position 3 years ago, he continued the plan. Because you weren't just a threat to Silver Pine Ridge. You were a threat to anyone who wanted to control the Northern Territories without opposition. A White Wolf Alpha could challenge even the Coalition's power structure, could unite packs under her banner through sheer strength of bloodline, could reshape the political landscape just by existing. So they tried to erase you, tried to make sure you never discovered what you were. And when that failed, when you reached 18 without shifting, they decided elimination was safer than continued suppression. The revelations burned through Alara's fever dreams, recontextualizing everything. Her father's death, the vitamins, the cruelty, the exile. It was all calculated genocide, a systematic attempt to wipe out a bloodline that threatened the established order. And it almost worked. Would have worked if Ronan hadn't found her, if the mate bond hadn't led him to Dead Man's Gulch. If she'd died 3 minutes earlier, frozen and alone, the Shadowmere line would have ended. But she didn't die. And now she was coming back, rebuilt from pain and truth, forged in the fire of detox and revelation. On the 14th night, something changed. Alara woke from a nightmare about the snow, gasping and shaking, but the fever was gone. Her skin felt cool, clammy with sweat, but normal. The hallucinations had stopped. And inside her chest, where there had always been emptiness, she felt something else. A presence, conscious and aware and furious. Her wolf, she's awake. Alara's voice was hoarse from screaming, barely above a whisper. Ronan, she's awake. Ronan moved from his chair to her bedside in an instant. Can you feel her, Gim? Yes, Alara closed her eyes, focusing inward. The wolf was massive, she could sense that even without shifting. Powerful beyond anything she'd imagined. And absolutely enraged. 10 years in a cage. 10 years of poison. 10 years of being suppressed and silenced. The wolf wanted blood, wanted revenge, wanted to tear apart everyone who'd done this to them. Easy, Alara spoke to her wolf like she would a traumatized animal. I know you're angry, but we're safe now. We're with our mate. We're going to get justice, but we have to be smart about it. The wolf settled slightly still, furious, but listening. She recognized Ronan's scent, recognized the mate bond, and that recognition calmed her rage to something more controlled. Not forgiveness, but patience, waiting for the right moment to strike. Dr. Merrick came in to run tests, drawing blood-checking scans. After an hour of analysis, he returned with results and an expression of awed disbelief. The wolfsbane is gone, completely purged from your system, and your genetic markers. Miss Ashford, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. Your wolf is not just active, she's powerful. exponentially more so than a standard werewolf. If I'm reading this correctly, when you shift, you'll be operating at a level that rivals alpha strength. Maybe exceeds it, White Wolf, Ronan said quietly. Royal bloodline. This is what they were so afraid of. When can I try? Alara sat up, ignoring her body's protests. When can I shift? Merrick exchanged a look with Ronan. Technically now, your body is ready, but your first shift will be painful, Miss Ashford. Breaking and reforming bones always is, and you'll need space somewhere safe and private and where you won't be interrupted. I know the place. Ronan stood, offering his hand to Alara. There's a clearing in the forest, sacred ground where alphas have shifted for generations. If you're ready, we can go tonight. Full moon is 3 days away, which will make the shift easier, but you don't have to wait if you don't want to. Alara took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. Her legs were shaky from 2 weeks in bed, but they held. I've waited 10 years. I don't want to wait 3 more days. Then let's go meet your wolf. Ronan smiled. Let's show her what freedom feels like. They left the medical wing, walking through Ironwood Lodge's corridors toward the exit. Alara was aware of wolves stopping and staring as they passed, whispers following in their wake. The Alpha King's mate, a survivor, something powerful. Let her pass. Cole Reeves met them at the door, handing Ronan a heavy coat. He'd prepared the clearing, sir. Privacy wards are up. No one will interrupt. Thank you, Cole. Ronan draped the coat over Alara's shoulders. His next words were carefully neutral, but Alara caught the underlying tension. Any movement from Silver Pine Ridge? They're quiet. Too quiet. Cole's expression darkened. No response to our presence in their territory last night. No challenge to the journal retrieval. Garrett Vaughn hasn't left his pack house in 3 days. It's like they're waiting for something. Or they think I'm dead and they're celebrating. Alara surprised herself with the bitterness in her voice. They don't know I survived. As far as they're concerned, the Shadowmere bloodline is extinct. Ronan and Cole exchanged a look that carried entire conversations. Then let them think that. For now. Ronan's smile was predatory. Let them feel safe. Because in 3 weeks we're hosting the Winter Solstice Ball. Mandatory attendance for all Coalition packs, including Silver Pine Ridge. Alara understood immediately. A public forum, witnesses from 40 packs, nowhere for Garrett to run or hide. A stage for revelation and justice. I'll need to be ready by then. She met Ronan's eyes. I'll need to be strong enough to face them, to show them exactly what they failed to destroy. You will be. Ronan touched her cheek, gentle, despite his size. We have 3 weeks to train you, to teach you how to use your power. And when you walk into that ballroom, when Garrett sees what he created by trying to eliminate you, the terror on his face will be the sweetest victory of your life. They left the lodge, walking into the Montana night. The snow had stopped falling, the sky clear and full of stars. In the distance, Alara could see the tree line, dark and ancient, calling to the wolf inside her. Whatever happened next, whoever she became, when she finally shifted, one thing was certain. The girl who'd been left to freeze in Dead Man's Gulch was gone forever. And in her place stood Alara Shadowmere, the last of the White Wolf's mate to the Alpha King, and the harbinger of reckoning for everyone who tried to erase her. The hunt was about to begin, and this time she wouldn't be the prey. The clearing was ancient, a perfect circle carved into the forest where moonlight pooled like liquid silver. Trees ringed the space, their branches forming a natural cathedral, and the ground was covered in snow that somehow looked softer here, untouched by the violence of the world beyond. This was sacred ground, Ronan had explained. A place where alphas came to commune with their wolves, where the barrier between human and beast grew thin enough to cross. Alara stood in the center, her breath forming clouds in the December cold, and felt her wolf straining against the cage that had held her for 18 years. 3 more days until the full moon. But she couldn't wait, wouldn't wait. The wolf was awake now, furious and powerful and demanding release. Are you afraid? Ronan asked. He stood at the edge of the clearing, giving her space but close enough to intervene if something went wrong. His eyes glowed gold in the darkness, his wolf just beneath the surface responding to the presence of hers. Terrified, Alara stripped off the heavy coat, then the thermal shirt, until she stood in just a sports bra and sweatpants. The cold bit into her skin, but she barely felt it. Her entire focus was internal, on the presence inside her chest that had been silent for so long. But I'm more afraid of staying human, of never knowing what I was supposed to be. Then let go. Ronan's voice carried alpha command and something gentler encouragement from a mate who understood what this moment meant. Stop fighting her. Stop protecting yourself. Just let her out. Alara closed her eyes and reached inward, touching that furious consciousness that shared her soul. For 10 years, she'd been trying to force a shift that couldn't happen, muscles straining against poison and suppression. Now she did the opposite. She opened at every door, dropped every wall, surrendered control completely. The wolf surged forward like a tidal wave. Pain exploded through Alara's body, white-hot and all-consuming. Her spine arched backward, bones, cracking and reforming vertebrae, extending into something longer. Something meant to run on 4 legs instead of 2. She screamed, the sound morphing midway into a howl, as her jaw extended, her teeth lengthening into fangs designed for tearing flesh. Her hands hit the snow, but they weren't hands anymore. Claws burst through her fingertips, razor-sharp and gleaming. Her legs snapped in reformed joints, reversing muscles, redistributing into the powerful haunches of a predator. Fur erupted across her skin, not growing but exploding from every pore, pure white and thick enough to survive Montana winters. The agony reached a crescendo, a moment where Alara was neither human nor wolf, but something caught between, and then it was over. The pain vanished, replaced by sensations so overwhelming she couldn't process them all at once. Everything was sharper. The world had been muted her entire human life, she realized. Colors were brighter, sounds, clearer, smells so vivid they carried information like written language. She could smell Ronan 20 feet away, could identify the leather of his boots, the cedar of his soap, the darker scent of his wolf. Just beneath his skin, could smell Cole Reeves stationed 100 yards away at the clearing's perimeter, gunpowder and coffee and military-grade tension. Could smell the elk herd 3 miles north, the mountain lion denning 2 miles east, the whole vast map of the forest laid out in scent. Her hearing was equally transformed. The whisper of snow falling from branches, the heartbeat of a rabbit hiding in the underbrush 50 yards away, the sound of Ronan's breathing, steady and controlled, but slightly elevated. He was affected by her shift, she realized. His wolf was responding to hers. Alara looked down at her paws, her legs, her body, and saw white. Pure, blinding white like fresh snow under moonlight. Her fur was thick and luxurious, built for the coldest winters. She could feel her tail, a foreign appendage that somehow knew exactly how to move for balance. Could feel her ears swiveling independently, tracking sounds. Could feel power in her muscles, coiled strength that promised speed and endurance beyond anything human. She was beautiful. She was deadly. She was free. A sound rumbled from her chest, something between a growl and a purr, and Ronan laughed. The sound was pure joy, uncomplicated and genuine. There she is. He stepped into the clearing and his shift was seamless, practiced over decades. One moment a man, the next a massive black wolf with eyes like molten gold. His wolf titan was enormous, built like a tank with scars on his flanks that spoke of battles won. An AlphaKing in wolf form, dominant and powerful and absolutely lethal. But when Titan looked at Alara, when their eyes met across the clearing, he did something that made her wolf's heart stutter. He lowered his head, ears back, tail down. A gesture of submission from the most powerful alpha in North America. Because she wasn't just powerful, she was more powerful than him. The White Wolf bloodline hadn't been legend or exaggeration. It was simple genetics, a mutation that created wolves beyond even alpha strength. Alara could feel it in her bones, could sense the raw potential singing through her muscles. She wasn't just Ronan's mate, she was his equal, maybe his superior. The realization should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt right, like a key turning in a lock, like coming home after years of exile. Alara took a tentative step forward, testing her new body. Her legs moved smoothly, instinct guiding her even though she'd never walked on 4 legs before. She took another step, then another, gaining confidence. Then she ran. The sensation was indescribable. She flew across the clearing, snow exploding around her paws, muscles eating up distance with each bound. She was fast. Faster than any human, faster than she'd ever imagined being. The forest blurred past trees, becoming streaks of dark against white, and she let out a howl of pure exhilaration. Titan was beside her in seconds, matching her pace, and together they tore through the forest. They ran for miles, 2 wolves painted in contrasts of black and white, moving through the Montana wilderness like ghosts. Alara learned her body through motion, discovered that she could jump higher than seemed possible, could pivot on instinct, could track scents and follow trails laid down hours earlier. They found the elk herd and stalked them together, Alara learning the patience of the hunt, the strategy of cutting one animal from the group. When they brought down a young bull working in perfect synchronization, Alara felt her wolf's satisfaction like warm honey in her chest. She'd hunted, she'd killed, she'd fed herself through strength and skill. She was a predator, and that was glorious. They ate their fill, then ran again, this time, playful, chasing each other through snowdrifts and over fallen logs. Titan was larger and stronger, but Alara was faster, more agile, able to dart and weave in ways his bulk couldn't match. When they wrestled, tumbling through the snow in a tangle of black and white fur, it wasn't about dominance. It was about joy. About two wolves who'd found each other against impossible odds, celebrating their bond with tooth and claw and the kind of physical connection that transcended words. Dawn was breaking when they finally returned to the clearing, both of them exhausted and exhilarated. Elara shifted back to human form, the transformation easier this direction, her body remembering its original shape. She was naked, covered in blood and snow, and she'd never felt more alive. Ronan shifted beside her, immediately wrapping her in his coat. His eyes were still gold, his wolf close to the surface, and when he looked at her, the expression on his face was awe and pride, and something deeper that made her chest tight. "You're magnificent," his voice was rough. "Absolutely magnificent. I've seen hundreds of wolves," shift Alara. "Alpha's warriors' wolves bred for strength. None of them compare to you. None of them could do what you just did." "What did I do?" Alara was still processing, her human mind trying to catalog the experiences of the last few hours. "You ran for 6 hours without tiring. You brought down an elk 3 times your size. You moved like you've been a wolf your entire life, not like someone on their first shift." Ronan cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Your father's journal was right. The white wolf bloodline isn't just stronger, it's transcendent. You're not like other wolves, Alara. You're what we were before we were domesticated by civilization." The weight of that revelation settled over her. She wasn't just different, she was other. A throwback to something ancient and wild, a genetic echo of wolves before pack politics and territorial disputes and human influence. No wonder Garrett had been so desperate to suppress her. A wolf like her could reshape the entire power structure just by existing. "What do we do now?" she asked, pulling the coat tighter. "I can shift. I can hunt. But I don't know how to fight. I don't know strategy or combat or any of the things I'll need to face Garrett at the Solstice Ball." "Now we train." Ronan smiled, but it was predatory. "You have 3 weeks to become a weapon, and I'm going to teach you how to destroy anyone who stands against you." Chapter. The training began the next morning and didn't stop for 3 weeks. Cole Reeves took over Ilara's combat education with the intensity of a Marine drill instructor preparing troops for deployment. The training facility in Ironwood Lodge's basement was state-of-the-art, equipped with padded floors, weapons racks, and enough space to shift and spar without destroying anything important. "Your advantages," Cole circled her like a predator on day one, assessing. "Speed, agility, raw power, and the element of surprise. Garrett thinks you're dead. When you walk into that ballroom, he's going to freeze. That's your opening, the 3 seconds where shock makes him vulnerable. But you need to know what to do with those 3 seconds." He spent the first week teaching her basic combat theory. Werewolf fighting wasn't like human martial arts. It was about using your wolf's instincts, targeting vulnerable areas, understanding pack dynamics and dominance displays. Elara learned that a fight between wolves was often won before the first blow, determined by body language and aura projection, and the subtle art of making your opponent submit through pure presence. "You're naturally dominant." Cole demonstrated stance, showing her how to hold her body to project authority. "You have royal blood, and other wolves will feel that. But dominance isn't just about being strong. It's about being certain. When you face Garrett, you can't hesitate. You can't show mercy or doubt. You have to believe absolutely and completely that you're superior to him, because you are." The second week focused on practical application. Cole brought in wolves from Ronan's elite guard to spar with her, teaching her how to read attacks, how to counter, how to use her smaller size as an advantage against larger opponents. She lost more fights than she won, at first ending up pinned and breathless, while Cole barked corrections. You're thinking like a human. Stop using your human brain and trust your wolf. She knows what to do. You're just getting in her way. It was frustrating and humiliating and exactly what Alara needed. She'd spent her whole life being told she was weak, being treated like something fragile that needed protection. Cole treated her like a soldier, pushing her past her limits, refusing to coddle or excuse failure. When she complained that an opponent was too strong, he made her fight someone stronger. When she said she was tired, he added another hour to the training session. And slowly, painfully, she improved. Her wolf and human minds began to integrate, working together instead of fighting for control. She learned to shift mid-combat using the transformation itself as a weapon, catching opponents off guard. She learned to read pack dynamics to identify the weakest member of a group and exploit it. She learned that fighting wasn't about honor or fairness. It was about winning by whatever means necessary. The third week introduced psychological warfare. Ronan took over this portion personally, teaching her the art of alpha command and verbal combat. Physical strength matters. He sat across from her in his office, the space comfortable but clearly designed for intimidation. The massive desk, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking coalition territory, the subtle scent markers that reminded visitors they were in an alpha's domain. But in politics and pack dynamics, words are often more dangerous than teeth. You need to learn how to weaponize your truth. He walked her through different scenarios: how to present evidence of poisoning to a council tribunal, how to cross-examine witnesses breaking down their defenses with targeted questions, how to turn public opinion playing to pack values of honor and loyalty while exposing Garrett's betrayal of those same values. You're not just accusing him of attempted murder. Ronan leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You're exposing him as a coward who poisoned a child because he was too weak to face her strength. That's a narrative that resonates with wolves. We respect our enemies, but we despise those who use poison and deception. They rehearsed her confrontation with Garrett dozens of times, Ronan playing the role of the desperate alpha trying to defend his actions. He was merciless, throwing every possible justification and excuse at her, teaching her how to counter each one with evidence and logic and the kind of cold fury that made other wolves back down. Never let him control the narrative. Ronan coached after one session where she'd let him derail her accusations. He'll try to make it about pack strength, about difficult decisions, about protecting Silverpine Ridge from threats. Don't let him. Make it about a man who murdered his beta, poisoned an 8-year-old girl, and tried to eliminate a bloodline because he was terrified of being challenged. The night before the solstice ball, Alara stood in front of a full-length mirror in her guest suite, examining the stranger who looked back. 3 weeks of intensive training had transformed her body. She was still lean, but now it was the leanness of a weapon, all functional muscle and controlled strength. Her hair had grown longer, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that had changed the most. They weren't the frightened eyes of a girl who'd been left to freeze. They were the eyes of a predator who'd learned to hunt. A knock on the door interrupted her inspection. "Come in." Ronan entered carrying a garment bag, and the sight of him in a tuxedo made Alara's breath catch. He looked devastating, all sharp edges and controlled power, the formal wear somehow making him more dangerous rather than less. "I brought you something." He unzipped the bag, revealing a gown that made Alara's heart stop. It was liquid silver, the fabric catching light like water, cut to emphasize her lean frame without restricting movement. Simple but elegant, the kind of dress that didn't need embellishment because the woman wearing it was statement enough. "It's perfect." Alara touched the fabric reverently. "Where did you—" "I had it commissioned." Ronan's smile was soft. "I wanted you to walk in there feeling like the queen you are. Not because of the dress, but because you deserve to see yourself the way I see you. Powerful. Untouchable. Mine." The possessiveness in that last word should have bothered her. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through her chest. "Yours." She stepped closer, looking up at him. "And you're mine. We're in this together, always." He bent to kiss her forehead, chaste and protective. "Tomorrow we show them what they tried to destroy. We show them that the Shadowmere bloodline doesn't die. It rises." The ballroom of Ironwood Lodge had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting rainbow light across marble floors. White roses climbed columns and archways, their scent mixing with expensive perfume and the underlying musk of powerful wolves. Tables draped in gold cloth held elaborate ice sculptures and towers of champagne glasses. A string quartet played classical music from a raised platform. And everywhere wolves, alphas from all 40 coalition packs, had answered the mandatory summons, bringing their lunas and elite guards. This was the social event of the year, a chance to see and be seen, to forge alliances and settle disputes through conversation rather than combat. The room hummed with power, dozens of dominant personalities navigating complex pack politics with smiles and handshakes and carefully worded threats. Near the bar, Alpha Garrett Vaughn of Silver Pine Ridge held court, looking insufferably smug in an expensive tuxedo. He'd gained in weight since Alara last saw him, success and power manifesting in the thickness of his neck and the softness of his jawline. Vivian clung to his arm, her crimson dress cut so low it bordered on obscene, and around her neck Alara's hands clenched into fists. Around Vivian's neck was a diamond necklace that had belonged to Elena Shadowmere, Alara's mother. She'd seen it in the one photograph her father had kept, recognized the distinctive pattern of stones. It wasn't just expensive jewelry Vivian was wearing. It was stolen heritage paraded like a trophy. "They don't know you're alive." Cole materialized at her side, his voice low. "Look at them. Comfortable. Arrogant. They think they got away with it." Alara stood in the shadows of the upper balcony, watching the party through the ornate railing. She wore the silver gown, her hair styled in an elegant updo that exposed the line of her neck and shoulders. She looked sophisticated and deadly, a far cry from the scared girl in an oversized hoodie who'd stood in the Silver Pine Ridge barn 3 months ago. "Let them enjoy it a few more minutes." Her voice was ice. "The fall is always worse when you think you're safe." Below, the quartet finished their piece. The room quieted, attention shifting to the grand staircase at the far end of the ballroom. This was the moment when Ronan would make his entrance, the formal presentation of the AlphaKing to his gathered allies. Tradition and theater combined. Cole stepped to the balcony railing, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "Lords and ladies of the Coalition, Alphas and Lunas of the Northern Territories, I present your host, the AlphaKing, Ronan Blackthorn." Ronan appeared at the top of the grand staircase, and the room seemed to contract around him. He wore a black tuxedo that looked military in its precision, every line perfect, every detail considered. His presence alone commanded attention, reminded everyone in the room exactly who held power in this territory. Conversations died. Lower-ranked wolves instinctively lowered their eyes. Even the other alphas straightened, acknowledging the dominant predator in their midst. Ronan descended 3 steps, then stopped. The room waited, confused by the break in protocol. He should walk down alone, circulate among his guests, play the political game. But instead, he turned to his right, offering his arm to the shadows. And his mate. Cole's voice carried triumph and warning simultaneously. "The future Queen of the North, Alara Shadowmere." The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Wolves began talking over each other, confused and shocked. The Shadowmere bloodline was extinct. Everyone knew that. It had been wiped out 20 years ago in hunting accidents and mysterious deaths. There were no survivors. There couldn't be survivors. Alara stepped into the light. She moved with the predatory grace of her wolf. No wasted motion, each step deliberate and powerful. The silver gown caught the chandelier light, making her look like she was carved from moonlight itself. Her dark hair contrasted sharply with her pale skin, but it was her eyes that captured attention. Violet, glowing violet, the unmistakable mark of the White Wolf bloodline. She took Ronan's offered arm, and together they descended the staircase. The crowd parted instinctively, wolves moving aside without conscious thought, responding to the aura of power radiating from the couple. They weren't just Alpha and Luna. They were royalty, the kind of pairing that happened once in a generation. Alara's eyes swept the crowd, cataloging faces, identifying allies and enemies. And then she found her target. Garrett Vaughn stood frozen near the bar, his champagne glass dangling, forgotten from numb fingers. His face had gone the color of old paper, all blood draining away, his eyes wide with the kind of horror that comes from seeing your worst nightmare made flesh. Vivian swayed beside him, one hand clutching his arm, the other touching the diamond necklace at her throat. Her red lips formed words without sound. "That's impossible. The rat. The defect. She's supposed to be dead." Ronan and Alara reached the bottom of the stairs and moved directly toward Garrett and Vivian. The crowd parted like the Red Sea wolves scrambling to get out of the way, everyone suddenly desperate to witness what was about to happen. Whispers followed them, a rising wave of speculation and shock. Is that really Shadowmere? I thought they were extinct. Look at her eyes. White wolf, but how? Where has she been? They stopped 3 feet from Garrett and Vivian. The silence was suffocating, 300 wolves holding their breath, waiting for whatever came next. Alpha Vaughn. Ronan's voice was polite, almost friendly, and somehow that made it more terrifying. I don't believe you've met my fiancé. Allow me to introduce Alara Shadowmere, daughter of Elena, and Richard Shadowmere, last surviving member of the White Wolf bloodline and my destined mate. Garrett's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Alara, his voice cracked on her name. How are you alive? Alara finished for him, her tone conversational. Disappointed Alpha Vaughn. You look like you've seen a ghost. Oh, wait. She smiled, cold and sharp as a blade. You thought I was a ghost. You thought the snow would bury me and your secrets along with my frozen body. How unfortunate for you that the AlphaKing found me before hypothermia finished what you started. The crowd erupted in whispers. Found her, what does that mean? Did Vaughn try to kill her? But that would be murder. Alara supplied the word clearly, making sure every wolf in the room heard. Attempted murder of a pack member. Illegal exile without council approval. Abandonment with intent to cause death. Those are the formal charges I'll be presenting to the tribunal tomorrow, along with evidence of long-term poisoning and conspiracy to eliminate a protected bloodline. That's Garrett finally found his voice, though it shook. That's absurd. You ran away. You left Silver Pine Ridge of your own accord. I have no idea what lies you've been told, but lies. Alara's voice cut like a whip. She took a step forward and Garrett stumbled back, his wolf instinctively retreating from her aura. Let me refresh your memory, Alpha Vaughn. November 14th, 2024. You declared me rogue in front of the entire pack because I failed to shift at my presentation ceremony. You ordered your enforcers Brock and Kane to drive me to the North Pass and leave me in Dead Man's Gulch. You specifically chose that location because it was remote, because a blizzard was coming, because you knew I wouldn't survive the night. Garrett's jaw twitched, that tiny tell Alara had learned to recognize. Lies. No lies. You're clearly unbalanced, making wild accusations. Do you want to know why I couldn't shift, Garrett? Alara spoke over him, addressing the entire room now. Because for 10 years since I was 8 years old, you and your father, before you had your pack nurse, feed me concentrated wolfsbane, every single morning disguised as vitamins administered by Nurse Greta under threat to her son's life. 10 years of systematic poisoning designed to suppress my wolf, to keep me weak and human, to prevent me from claiming my heritage. A collective gasp swept through the room. Wolfsbane poisoning was a serious crime under coalition law, considered one of the most cowardly and dishonorable methods of attacking another wolf. The fact that it had been done to a child sustained over a decade elevated it to an atrocity that demanded justice. You have no proof. But Garrett's voice wavered now, confidence crumbling. You're making wild claims without evidence. Oh, I have evidence. Alara's smile widened. Medical documentation from Dr. Owen Merrick showing wolfsbane metabolites in my bloodstream. Signed testimony from Nurse Greta, who has been granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation. Security footage from the night your enforcers dumped me in the gulch, including audio of your explicit orders to make sure I froze. And most damning of all, your father's journal documenting the conspiracy to eliminate the Shadowmere bloodline, which my mate's forces recovered from the Silver Pine Ridge pack house. The crowd was murmuring, now angry and shocked. Other alphas were looking at Garrett with disgust and calculation, already distancing themselves from a sinking ship. Pack alliances were built on honor and strength. What Garrett had done was neither honorable nor strong. It was cowardly and cruel, and that kind of behavior threatened the foundations of pack society. Vivian, sensing the tide turning, tried to salvage the situation. She stepped forward, her expression shifting to false concern. Alara, darling, you've clearly been traumatized. Perhaps you've been confused by your ordeal. Garrett would never do such terrible things. He don't, Alara's eyes fixed on Vivian, violet fire, making the other woman flinch. Don't pretend you weren't complicit, Vivian. You were there the night they exiled me. You laughed. You told me to die quickly so you could have my bunk for your shoe collection. You stood by while they stripped my coat and drove me to my death. And now you wear my mother's jewelry like some kind of trophy. Alara reached out and grabbed the diamond necklace, yanking hard enough to break the clasp. Vivian shrieked, stumbling backward, but Alara held the necklace up for the room to see. This belonged to Elena Shadowmere, my mother. It was stolen from her body after she died, giving birth to me. She turned to address the crowd. Everything you see Garrett and Vivian flaunting their wealth, their status, their power, it's built on the graves of my family, on the murder of my father who was killed trying to protect me from this exact scenario, on the attempted murder of me, an 8-year-old child whose only crime was being born with the wrong bloodline. The room had gone completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the confrontation, every wolf transfixed by the drama unfolding. This wasn't just politics anymore. This was personal. This was justice. Garrett seemed to realize he was losing control of the narrative. He drew himself up, trying to project alpha authority. These are serious accusations. If you have evidence, it should be presented to the council in a formal tribunal, not thrown around at a social gathering like cheap gossip. Oh, we'll have a tribunal. Ronan spoke for the first time since the confrontation began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. in the council chambers. I've already contacted the 12 presiding alphas. They'll hear evidence, testimony, and witness statements. And then they'll render judgment according to coalition law. But tonight, Laura stepped closer to Garrett, so close she could smell his fear, sharp and sour beneath expensive cologne. Tonight I wanted to see your face when you realized you failed, when you understood that you didn't eliminate the Shadowmere bloodline. You just made it angry. And then Alara did something that made the entire room gasp. She let her aura slip just for a moment, just enough to give everyone present a taste of what she truly was. White wolf power exploded from her in a visible wave, the air itself seeming to shimmer with ancient energy. It wasn't violent or aggressive. It was simply there, undeniable and overwhelming, the kind of force that made alpha wolves instinctively bare their throats. Garrett and Vivian dropped to their knees. They didn't choose to. Their bodies simply couldn't remain standing under the weight of her presence. Garrett's eyes were wide with terror, his mouth open in a silent scream, confronting the reality of what he'd tried to destroy. All around the ballroom, lower-ranked wolves were bowing their instincts, recognizing royalty when it manifested. Even some of the alphas dipped their heads slightly, acknowledging power that exceeded their own. Alara held them there for 5 seconds that felt like hours, then pulled her aura back, letting them breathe again. Garrett collapsed forward, gasping, his expensive tuxedo rumpled and sweaty. Vivian was crying, mascara running down her cheeks, the perfect facade shattered. Guards. Ronan didn't raise his voice, but it carried to every corner of the ballroom. Detain them. They'll be held in the security wing until tomorrow's tribunal. Charges include attempted murder, illegal use of controlled substances, conspiracy to eliminate a protected bloodline, and violations of coalition law too numerous to list individually. Security personnel materialized from the crowd wolves, from Ronan's elite guard, professional and efficient. They hauled Garrett and Vivian to their feet, securing their wrists with restraints that glowed faintly with runes designed to suppress shifting. No, Vivian shrieked, thrashing against her captors. You can't do this. I'm a Luna. You're nothing. Alara stepped close to Vivian as the guards dragged her past, lowering her voice so only the other woman could hear. You're just the help who got ideas above her station. And now you're going to learn what happens when you steal from a Shadowmere. The guards hauled them away, Garrett silent and broken, Vivian screaming threats and promises of vengeance that rang hollow in the stunned silence of the ballroom. When the doors closed behind them, cutting off Vivian's shrieks, the room remained frozen for a long moment. Then slowly one alpha began to clap. Then another. Then the entire ballroom erupted in applause, wolves recognizing the theater they just witnessed, the perfect execution of justice delivered with style and precision. But Alara barely heard it. Her attention was fixed on the doors through which Garrett had disappeared, her mind already moving to the next phase. The tribunal. The formal presentation of evidence. The legal dismantling of everything Garrett had built on the graves of her family. And then when the law had done its work, the real justice would begin. Ronan took her hand, squeezing gently. How do you feel? Alara looked up at him, violet eyes glowing in the chandelier light. Like I'm just getting started. The tribunal convened in the council chambers at precisely 10 a.m. The room was circular, designed for acoustics, in sight lines with 12 high-backed chairs arranged in a crescent for the presiding alphas. At the center stood a raised platform where defendants and witnesses would present their cases. Gallery seating ringed the upper level, packed with wolves who'd heard about last night's confrontation and wanted to witness the formal proceedings. Alara sat beside Ronan at the prosecution table wearing a simple black suit that was all business. Across from them, Garrett and Vivian sat in restraints looking diminished without their expensive clothes and confidence. A court-appointed defender stood with them, a thin wolf named Harrison, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The 12 council alphas filed in, taking their seats. These were the most powerful wolves in the coalition, aside from Ronan himself, leaders of the largest pack's wolves who'd proven themselves through strength and wisdom. They would hear the case and render judgment according to coalition law. Counsel Alpha Morrison, an older wolf with silver hair and sharp eyes, banged a gavel. This tribunal is convened to hear charges brought by Alara Shadowmere against Garrett Vaughn Alpha of Silver Pine Ridge Pack and Vivian Hale Luna of Silver Pine Ridge Pack. The charges are attempted murder, illegal use of controlled substances, conspiracy to eliminate a protected bloodline, and multiple violations of coalition law. How do the defendants plead not guilty? Harrison stood speaking for his clients. My clients deny all charges and request a full evidentiary hearing. Morrison nodded. Proceed with evidence, Miss Shadowmere. What followed was 3 hours of methodical destruction. Alara, coached by Ronan and Cole, presented her case with the precision of a prosecutor and the passion of a survivor. She walked the counsel through every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every document that proved Garrett's conspiracy. Dr. Merrick testified about the wolfsbane in her bloodstream, explaining the medical impossibility of accidental exposure. This was deliberate, sustained poisoning over a decade. The dosage was carefully calibrated to suppress shifting without causing immediate death. Someone with medical knowledge designed this protocol. Nurse Greta took the stand next, sobbing as she confessed. Alpha Marcus Vaughn, Garrett's father, he threatened my son Tommy, said if I didn't give Alara the medicine, he'd exile Tommy as rogue. I had to choose between my child and someone else's. God forgive me, I chose my own. Brock and Kane, the enforcers who dumped Alara in Dead Man's Gulch, had been given immunity for their testimony. They described the night in detail, the explicit orders from Garrett, the theft of her coat, the choice of location, specifically because it bordered the gulch where bodies were rarely found. Cole Reeves presented the security footage, grainy, but clear enough to show the truck leaving Silver Pine Ridge territory with Alara in the back driving north toward the gulch. Audio captured Garrett's voice. Make sure she freezes. No mistakes. I want the Shadowmere bloodline extinct by morning. And finally, Alara read from her father's journal. Richard Shadowmere's own words documenting the conspiracy. Marcus Vaughn discovered Elena's true identity 3 months after we joined his pack. He realized our daughter would carry White Wolf blood. Today he gave me a choice: suppress Alara's wolf permanently, or he'll kill us both. I've agreed to his terms to buy time. I'm documenting everything. If something happens to me, someone needs to know the truth. By the time Alara finished, the evidence was overwhelming. Garrett sat slumped in his chair, his face gray, his alpha confidence completely evaporated. Even Harrison looked disgusted with his clients. Does the defense wish to present evidence? Morrison asked. Harrison stood briefly. The defense rests. There's nothing we can say that would contradict the evidence presented. Then this tribunal will render judgment. Morrison conferred quietly with the other 11 alphas, their conversation too low for the gallery to hear. After 5 minutes, they broke apart, and Morrison stood. In the matter of Alara Shadowmere versus Garrett Vaughn and Vivian Hale, this council finds the defendants guilty on all charges. The evidence is clear, compelling, and horrific. These defendants engaged in a conspiracy spanning 20 years to eliminate a protected bloodline through murder, poisoning, and attempted murder. Their actions violate every principle of honor and pack law that holds our society together. He paused, letting the weight of the verdict settle. Standard sentencing for these crimes would be exile and stripping of rank. However, given the severity and duration of the offenses, this council invokes the ancient right of the aggrieved. Miss Shadowmere, as the primary victim, you have the right to set their punishment within the bounds of coalition law. The room went silent. The right of the aggrieved was rarely invoked, a tradition from the old days when pack justice was more personal. It meant Alara could determine their fate, could make the punishment fit the crime in whatever way she saw appropriate. Alara stood slowly, every eye in the chamber fixed on her. She looked at Garrett, and Vivian saw the fear in their eyes and felt her wolf satisfaction like warm honey. 20 years ago, you murdered my father. 10 years ago, you started poisoning me. 3 months ago, you left me to freeze in Dead Man's Gulch with no coat, no food, no chance of survival. She walked toward them slowly. You thought you were eliminating a threat, protecting your position, making a difficult but necessary choice. She stopped directly in front of Garrett's chair. So here's my choice. I sentence you to experience exactly what you sentenced me to. You'll be driven to Dead Man's Gulch. Your coats will be taken. Your shoes will be taken. You'll be left there in the cold just like you left me. If you survive until morning, you'll be exiled as rogues stripped of all rank and pack affiliation. If you don't survive, she shrugged, the gesture casual and devastating. Then I guess the Gulch claims another 2 bodies. Either way, the world will be rid of 2 cowards who used poison because they were too weak to face their enemies with honor. Garrett found his voice broken and desperate. Please, it's 20 below zero tonight. The blizzard warnings. We'll die. You can't. You're wolves. Alara echoed the words Vivian had said to her 3 months ago, throwing them back with perfect precision. Survive. Or don't. I really don't care which. But there was one more thing, one final twist that would complete her revenge. Alara placed her hand on Garrett's forehead, and he screamed, trying to pull away, but held in place by the restraints. What are you doing? Vivian shrieked. Stop! You're hurting him. I'm taking back what he stole. Alara's eyes glowed violet power channeling through her palm. The sealing. It was described in her father's journal, an ancient technique passed down through the white wolf bloodline. The ability to sever a wolf's connection to their pack to strip away rank and status at the genetic level. Garrett convulsed his back, arching his mouth open in a silent scream. Alara could feel his alpha power, could sense the pack bonds that connected him to Silverpine Ridge, and she grabbed them with her will and tore. The bonds shattered like glass, the alpha rank dissolving, leaving Garrett as nothing more than a lone wolf with no pack and no power. She did the same to Vivian, who fainted from the pain, and when Alara stepped back, both of them were changed, diminished. The aura of power that had surrounded them was gone, leaving behind hollow shells. Now you're rogues, Alara addressed the entire chamber. Strip them, take them to the Gulch, leave them to the mercy of the Montana winter just as they left me. Let the forest decide if they deserve to survive. The guards moved forward, and this time Garrett and Vivian didn't fight. They were too broken, too diminished by what Alara had done. As they were led away, Garrett looked back once, his eyes meeting Alara's, and she saw understanding there. He knew exactly what was about to happen. He knew he wouldn't survive the night, and he knew he deserved it. The chamber remained silent until the doors closed. Then Morrison stood along with the other 11 council alphas. As one, they bowed to Alara. Not a small nod of respect, a full bow, the kind reserved for true royalty. Long live the White Wolf, Morrison said. May the Shadowmere bloodline rise again and rule with wisdom and strength. The gallery echoed the sentiment, hundreds of wolves bowing, acknowledging that something had shifted in the coalition power structure. Alara Shadowmere wasn't just Ronan's mate anymore. She was a force in her own right, a queen who'd been forged in betrayal and ice and come back powerful enough to reshape the world. 2 months later, on a cold February afternoon, Alara stood in the office of what had been the Silverpine Ridge Pack House. It was her office now in what was now called Shadowmere Valley. The council had granted her control of the territory as compensation for Garrett's crimes, and she'd spent the last 8 weeks systematically rebuilding everything he'd destroyed. The servant quarters where she'd once slept were gone, converted into a community center. The bunkhouse was now a school for young wolves, teaching them reading and mathematics alongside hunting and fighting. The old hierarchy that had valued strength above all else was being replaced with something more balanced, more just, more like what her father had believed in. A knock on the door interrupted her review of budget reports. Come in. Ronan entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee and looking windswept from his ride over from Ironwood Lodge. Thought you could use a break. You've been working 16-hour days since we transferred the territory. Someone has to undo 20 years of corruption. Alara accepted the coffee, gratefully savoring the warmth. Besides, I like being busy. Gives me less time to think about them, Ronan finished gently. He knew she meant Garrett and Vivian, whose bodies had been found 3 days after their ex saw frozen together under the pine tree in Dead Man's Gulch, the same tree where Alara had almost died. Poetic justice, people called it. Karma, the wheel turning full circle. Alara wasn't sure what to call it. She'd wanted them dead, had sentenced them to death, and yet seeing the photos of their frozen bodies had triggered complicated emotions. Not regret exactly, but not satisfaction either. Just a kind of hollow completion, like finishing a story that had gone on too long. "Do you think I'm a monster?" she asked quietly. For killing them that way, Ronan set down his mug and pulled her into his arms, his warmth chasing away the cold that had nothing to do with temperature. "I think you're a survivor who demanded justice. They tried to bury you, Alara. Instead, they planted a seed that grew into something they couldn't control. If that makes you a monster, then the world needs more monsters like you." She leaned into him, letting herself be held, letting herself be vulnerable in a way she never could with anyone else. "I used to dream about snow, about freezing, every night 4 weeks after you found me. But lately the dreams changed," Ronan guessed. She nodded. "Now I dream about running, about hunting, about being free. The snow doesn't scare me anymore." She pulled back to look at him, violet eyes clear. "It reminds me that I'm alive, that I survived, that winter tried to kill me and failed." Ronan smiled, that rare expression that transformed his face from intimidating to beautiful. "Then let's celebrate that. Let's go for a run, just the two of us. Let the wolves out to play." They shifted in the office clothes, shredding as their bodies reformed into black and white wolves. Titan and Alara's unnamed wolf, two predators who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd built something stronger than pack politics or bloodline heritage or ancient prophecy. They ran through Shadowmere Valley, through forests that knew their scent, past wolves who bowed as they passed, recognizing their queen. They ran until the past fell away, and there was only the present, only the moment, only the joy of being alive and powerful and free. When they returned at dusk, shifting back to human form in the clearing where Allure had first transformed, she looked at Ronan and saw her future, not just as his mate, but as his equal, a partner in building something better than what had come before. "I love you." The words came easily, honestly. "You saved me, not just from the cold, but from believing I was worthless." Ronan cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "You saved yourself, Alara. I just had the privilege of watching you rise, and I will spend every day of my life making sure you never forget what you are capable of." They kissed as the sun set over Shadowmere Valley, two wolves who'd found their home in each other, who'd built a kingdom on the ashes of cruelty and emerged stronger for it. And if sometimes late at night Alara still dreamed about snow, she woke up to warmth, woke up to Ronan's arms around her, to the knowledge that she was safe and loved and powerful beyond measure. They tried to erase her. Instead, they had created a legend. The girl who froze became the woman who refused to break. The Omega became the queen. The victim became the victor. And the Shadowmere bloodline, declared extinct 20 years ago, rose from the ice to reclaim its throne. The end, but also the beginning.